present another view of source apportionment modeling to inform air quality policies. I'm grateful for this opportunity, and I'm also grateful for the speakers earlier this morning who've already started to introduce a number of such approaches. And as I think you will realize, it's nicely complementary to address different needs and expectations. So I want also to congratulate Konkaway to come up with a nice program for you this morning. So what I will be talking about is essentially the air control toolbox, which is, again, a surrogate model, a meta model that we design in particular as part of the CAMS policy product service. So just to set a bit the scenes of the name of CAMS has been mentioned a couple of times already, but I'm not so sure it's all the people following the symposium today are familiar with the Copernicus Atmosphere Monitoring Service. So what CAMS is doing is really to provide a number of operational, time-critical information that are quality controlled, that are full, free, and open on air pollution and health, but also on solar energy, greenhouse gases, and climate forcing in Europe, but also elsewhere in the world. Copernicus, more largely, is really the European flagship program for Earth observation. And in particular, the CAMS component has been delegated to the European Center for Medium-Range Weather Forecast, ECMWF. And to achieve the quite vast program of CAMS, ECMWF relies on a number of contractors, and that's where I'm going to Ineris. So the French National Institute on Industrial Environment and Risks is delegated one of those contracts, which is in particular the policy service, but we also operate together with Météo France the European production system. So the next screen is here. So the policy service, we have a website which is really a one-stop shop for all the public and free access to a number of products. So it's policy.atmosphere.copernicus.eu. On that website, you will find a number of reports that describe the state of air quality every year. We also focus on a given air pollution episode to explain how such episodes are building up and what are the main drivers of air pollution to Europe. And we provide a number of tools and services which are interactive on the website. They're updated on a daily basis using state-of-the-art numerical models, also to capture the diversity of air pollution situations that occur throughout the year and throughout Europe. So please take a moment to visit our website, and in the next few slides I will guide you through an interactive visit to a number of tools we are offering. So I don't know if it's possible to switch the screens now. Yes, thank you. So when you arrive on our website, you will be given the opportunity to visit a number of menus on the right-hand side, and I will not present you in detail the reporting work we are doing, but really focus on the interactive tools. And if you look at specifically this daily air pollution forecast, so depending how you enter, you may arrive on the forecast of the given day, of today. But for the sake of illustration, I picked a couple of specific situations that nicely show what you learn out of these tools. So I selected the 13th of February last year, 2023, for the city of Paris. And when looking at the PM10 air pollution situation for Paris for that day, you have the outlook for the forecast for the next 4 days. And in Paris, you had forecasted this situation with quite a moderate level at the beginning, and then two substantial peaks forecasted for the 14th and the 15th of February. Then what's interesting in this tool is that we also provide a view of the main contributors or the main source region that lead to the buildup of this PM10 episode in Paris for that day. And you will realize that it's displayed in different colors, and essentially we have two really dominating sources for that case. It's the city of Paris itself, in the dark gray at the bottom of the figure, and then the rest of France, which really contributes to 90% of the pollution situation for that given day. There are some contributions from elsewhere, especially from Germany at the beginning of the period in light yellow, and also from Spain in light blue at the end of the period, but it's really marginal in that specific situation. And here we're really talking about an air pollution episode which is driven by French sources and Paris in particular. typical situation that we have during wintertime stagnation episode. But then it's also interesting to look at the chemical composition of the particulate matter we have in that specific case. So you switch to this second tab, looking at the chemical composition, and you will realize the date has been changed. So sorry, I need to go back to last year. The fun of interactive display. Going back to the 13th of February, you realize that for that day, we have essentially primary organic matter, POM, contributing to this buildup, but also important sources of inorganic aerosols that contributes both sulfate and nitrate, contributing to this buildup for that day. So this is just for Paris on the 13th of February last year. And if I move to another date, so just 1 week after, and selecting another city, which happens to be Malaga in the example I picked. Malaga is not in the list. Again, the fun of interactive displays. I tested it again just a minute ago, but yes, here it is. So Malaga with an accent on the A appears after U. Now we'll remember that. The forecast for the day is the following. For PM, you have mild concentration for the first 2 days, and then you have a large peak, which really is due to natural dust coming in from the Sahara. And if you look at the corresponding contributing countries, you realize that here really we flag this natural contribution, which is much larger than the contribution that we will have from Malaga itself or from the rest of Spain. So as you can see, when you switch from one situation to the next, you have very different forecasts. Of course, you will legitimately be asking, what is the overall picture? So here we have yearly air pollution analysis. And if I look at an example for Brussels, of course, and the year 2022, you have an overall view of the timeline of the full year 2022 and the various contributing countries and sources over that year. And you will realize in yellow that there are substantial contributions of natural sources when you look at PM10, especially in the beginning of the year. And also here, just before November, you have a huge peak, which is attributed to natural sources. And that's why, at the end, PM10, about more than 20% of the PM10 in Belgium over the full year 22 is actually allocated to natural sources. Then you need to look at the chemical speciation to look a little bit more closely. And you realize that the chemical sources are depending. The peak I was mentioning just before for November is really driven by desert dust. But otherwise, the natural contribution in Brussels for PM10 are largely fed by the sea salt components, especially when you look at the beginning of the winter. So there's really a big diversity of the relative sources that contribute to PM, and I hope that through these couple of examples, you will understand that the situation for PM can be very varied depending on the cities, the dates, and you also need to look at overall longer-term period to have a better view. Now, if you can switch back to the main screen, I will be given a couple of other examples, really focusing on ozone rather than PM. So ozone is a pollutant that was not really discussed in much detail up to now this morning, and it's really a totally different beast compared to the usual players we focus when we talk about air quality. So to speak about usual players, I will start with showing an animation for NO2. NO2 was mentioned this morning. This is a view we get from a model. It's a kind of digital twin, if you like. It's a model representing the whole Earth. And in that animation, it goes over 1 month, and you see the NO2 plumes. And it's the classical view everybody has in mind when we think about air pollution. We see the main source regions, which are the bigger anthropogenic areas. And in some occasion, you will also be able to notice the emissions around the oil rigs, in particular in the northern seas and the maritime tracks. But this is just to illustrate what intuitively people think of the picture of the Earth when we expect an animation of the main dispersion of air pollutants. And the problem, so to say, with ozone is that the picture is radically different. So that's why it makes everything a bit more complex to understand and to grasp, even from an intuitive basis for ozone. So what you see here is, again, 1 month. Again, a model. It's not satellite images, not yet. Soon we will be able to get that from satellites, but not yet. And in that model, you have every day this kind of large diurnal cycle. So ozone builds up in the afternoon and decreases largely in the morning. And that's why you see this cycle going from the east to the west. What's going from the east to the west is actually the sun. So every day you have earlier afternoon peaks in the eastern part of the domain than in the west. It's really not the advection that would otherwise occurs from the west to the east. And you will realize that we build up ozone at the surface close to the really anthropogenic areas. And if you can just update or replay this animation, because I need to explain a couple of more things. Yes, thank you. If you focus on what's happening to the northeast of the US, you see every day this buildup of ozone. And what you will notice is, even though over New York it's decreasing at night, the plume that has been formed over the Atlantic is not decreasing. And that's the problem, the long-range problem of ozone, is that that plume is not decreasing. It actually goes on and continues to travel like thousands of kilometers up to Europe. And that's why we have this problem of ozone being really a long-range problem. When it's built up, it actually continues to be transported very far away from the sources. So it makes everything more complex with ozone. And that's why we need to mobilize different techniques for the source apportionment. And that's what we try to achieve in the Copernicus Atmosphere Monitoring Service in this policy website. So that's why we designed what we call this air control toolbox, which is, again, a surrogate model, very similar to Sherpa or Quark in the design, or GAINS, or other surrogate models that are being used for air quality management. But one of the very strong specificity of ACT, the air control toolbox, is that it's able to capture the non-linear responses. And that's very important for the ozone episodes. And just to illustrate what we can achieve with ACT, so here I'm showing an example for one air pollution episode, the 10th of July 2023. We had substantial heat wave and then ozone buildup over Europe. And what you see in ACT is that you have these menus on the left-hand side on the slide, and the user on the website can actually see what would happen if you cut emissions of the relative sectors displayed here by any given amount that the user decided to use. And the result is displayed on these two screenshots. On the left-hand side, the user decided to cut half of the road transport emissions. And on the right-hand side, the user decided to cut half of the shipping emissions. And you have very different pictures. On the left-hand side, you will realize that we do mitigate ozone over most of the part where the ozone peak was large. There is small parts, especially over the Netherlands, where there is not much effect or even an increase of ozone in that particular case. And if you focus on the right-hand side, the effect of shipping, you have very different responses depending on where you look over Europe. But basically, over land, the response is not so large as expected. It's mainly overseas. If you start with the Mediterranean, we can have a negative effect really on the shipping lanes that goes just above North Africa. But elsewhere in the Mediterranean, away from the shipping lanes, you have a benefit. You have managed to decrease ozone quite substantially. And if you look at what's happening over the northern seas and the Benelux area, decreasing shipping emissions, even for that day, even for a peak, is actually leading to an increase of ozone. So the situation can be very different for one given day when you look at these different maps. I want to show you a little bit more closely what can happen if you look at one given location. Here we're looking at July, but 22, the city of Amsterdam. We really had a nice episode. And here in the time freeze in the bottom, we are looking at 6 days of what we call this source apportionment. And basically, you have over these 6 days a strong natural background contribution every day. It's a bit what was already mentioned this morning by Philippe Tunis. There is always a large background of ozone. But then during the main peak, which is really on the 19th of July, you have an additional increment which is due to traffic and industrial emission, as well as nonlinear contributions. And it's really this increment that can be targeted with air quality policies, even though there is this big background, which is a natural contribution. And all of this is very complicated if you look at the right-hand side, because you need to go in what we call this chemical regime type of analysis. So this has been theorized already 30 years ago, but we design in ACT a specific view when we display chemical regime, looking at either at traffic or industrial emissions. So we see the response when we decrease traffic and industrial emissions for 2 days. On the top, it's for the 15th of July, and on the bottom, it's for the 19th of July. And on the top, it's actually before the event. As you can see on the time freeze, it's actually a day where ozone is not that large. On that day, if you reduce traffic emissions, you increase ozone. So what is seen on the isoplate, you have actually a red area when you decrease traffic emission. And if you still look at Amsterdam and just 4 days later, when you reduce traffic emission, you have a strong benefit. You can reduce ozone by as much as 15 micrograms per cubic meter. And industry is also a good benefit for the 19th of July, and it was not the case 4 days before. So when everything changes from day to day, from city to city, of course, people can be a bit confused and overwhelmed by the level of complexity. And that's why we designed this an atlas, similar to what GRC was proposing, when we try to have a more synthetic overview. And that's the work we conducted with the support of Konkawi. It's actually in a paper. Did not update the slide, but the paper just appeared in Atmospheric Environment preprints. And here we are looking at overall evolution for the case of Paris, but over a longer time period. We are not looking at individual days. If I start with the right-hand side plot, this is the summer average of ozone and the overall response we have for summer average of ozone. And here you will realize that, so it's switched. The traffic is on the y-axis. When you reduce traffic emission a little bit, you may have a negative effect for the summer average of ozone. But if you reach out to larger reduction of traffic, above 60%, you start to have a benefit. And on the right-hand side, reducing industrial emission is beneficial for ozone in the Paris area. But really, it's not the case for the other two plots. If you go to the one on the very left, the annual mean of ozone will be negatively affected by a reduction of either industry or traffic emission. And that's really this titration effect. We know that when we reduce emissions, we may have a negative impact for the annual average. So it's really the complexity of ozone. For the peaks, it can be positive, but for the annual mean, it can be a negative effect. And in the middle, you have this SOMO 35, not entering in the detail. It's an indicator of health impact. And this indicator is basically halfway between what we have for the peaks and what we have for the annual mean. So there are some parts of the chemical regimes which are detrimental and some of the parts which are beneficial. So it's really the complexity of the ozone chemistry. And if we try to synthesize a bit further, so still in the same paper, you will be able to see those pie charts where we look at the overall chemical regimes for a series of 22 European cities. Started with the peaks on the right-hand side, we will realize that for most of the cities, there is a benefit in reducing traffic or industry. So in most of the cases, the benefit is when you act on both traffic and industry. And there are some cities where traffic is really more interesting than industry, which is the lowest part in those pie charts. And there are also some cities in the light pink where the benefit is not so clear. But if you look at the annual mean or the winter mean or even the SOMO 35, the red colors really indicate the fact that there are some negative effects. Clearly, in some cases, reducing emission can be counterproductive for the ozone situation in Europe, but that's not for the peaks. So now I need to conclude. I just want to highlight the fact that now we really have a variety of different techniques to model the source apportionment diagnostics. I think it was the case illustrated in my presentation, but it was even better illustrated when you put in perspective with the other presentation you had this morning. So the CAMS policy support makes available some of them on the website. The specificity of CAMS is that this is updated on a daily basis, so you have the everyday forecast, and you can also go back to historical time periods. And I hope that our various presentations this morning help you to understand how this diagnostic can help us to better interpret the air pollution episode and also identify and design the efficient mitigation policies. Yet keeping in mind that we have also some food on our plate to keep improving the numerical models over time. Thank you.